Hey everyone, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development, your host of Sales and Cigars. Today's episode, my guest is Terry Bean. I'm in Michigan outside of Detroit. Terry is like 2 towns over from me. We're actually kind of neighbors. He's been around the Detroit area for a long time, does a lot of speaking engagements, has written 3 books. And the topic today, we talk about mindset and how we need to be able to take care of ourselves, that sort of self-care idea, but not in this like mushy-feely kind of thing, like how to do it if you're, how women have a natural ability to do this and men have a struggle with this a little bit. And it's talking about how we get rid of some of the baggage and the trash that we carry around. So go grab a cocktail, grab a cigar, strap in for another exciting episode of Sales and Cigars. So Terry, welcome to Sales and Cigars. I appreciate you taking some time to jump on the program.
Thanks, Walter. I'm glad to be here, man. I feel like I'm missing out. I should have a stick with me. Although my wife would absolutely whoop my butt if I was sitting in here smoking one.
Well, if I was in the house, it would be a serious problem. Sometimes I have to shower before I get into bed if I've had a couple of them.
That's the goal here, man. Drop the clothes at the laundry, hop in the shower, and then maybe she'll say hello. Maybe.
Yeah, there were. I mean, my office is in my pole barn on my property, so I'm only like 60, 70 steps from my door. But I can be out here and have 2 or 3 cigars in an evening, and it's pungent when I go in. And all she does is just point to the master bath, and hey, I'm not going to argue with her because it does stink after when you're not enjoying it. So she has a point. And she's never wrong, as I'm told.
I might be married to the same lady. Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, that's cool.
We're 2 minutes, not even 2 minutes in, and we're already in trouble. That's good.
Yeah, well, I don't know about your wife, but mine will never see this, so I'm good.
Well, I'm 159 dropped today, and she's never listened to one. It's like, I don't care about sales, and I don't like cigars, so why would I listen?
Right. These topics don't interest me, Walter, so I'm going to just pass.
Well, thanks for the support.
Yes, sir. Yeah, man.
Well, let me ask a question I ask most of the guests. Is there and it's a little tricky when I'm talking to an author, but is there a book that you think, if I'm an entrepreneur and I'm in it for 2 or 3 years, and are you gonna what book would you recommend that somebody like that read? You got something that you think's important?
So I've got 3, and the last one will be a little self-serving, but the first 2 will be less so. The first one that I tell people to read all the time is a book called Way of the Peaceful Warrior. It was written by Dan Millman probably 30 some years ago, maybe even 40. And it's a brilliant journey into who we can be if we choose to be. So I'm a huge fan of that. They actually made a movie out of it called Peaceful Warrior, if you're more inclined to sit for 2 hours. Great movie. Nick Nolte was in it and a couple other folks. So
does the movie represent the book?
I would say it's about 82% spot on, right? It's not a full 100%, but when has a movie ever been? But both are enjoyable. I, of course, like the book better, but I thought they did a good job with the movie. And so that's one. Number 2, and I think if this book was required 6th grade reading, the world would be a better place in a generation. And that book's called The 4 Agreements. It was written by a guy named Don Miguel Ruiz. And in short, the 4 agreements are: be impeccable with your word, basically don't gossip about people and make sure you're minding your self-talk. Number 2 is don't make assumptions. I don't think I have to explain that. Number 3 is don't take things personally. And to be honest, I may have 2 and 3 mixed up. I usually do. And the 4th agreement's always do your best. Right. And it's recognizing that from day to day, from even minute to minute, your best is going to change. But as long as you're doing the best in the moment in which you find yourself, things are going to work out just fine.
That would be so impactful. Just the one agreement of like not taking shit personally. Like when somebody says something that they disagree with, they don't need to go, take a walk around the block and decompress themselves.
Right. Yeah, I don't need a safe space. I know that you're not even talking about me, man. You're talking about something that happened to you 4 minutes before I walked in the door, right? And we forget, right? We're so ego-centered that we think everything's about us. And the reality is most people are just busy trying to get through their day. They might care about you, but trust me, they don't care about you.
Not in the way that you think they do. No,
that's right.
Don't.
That's right, man. So that one is that book, again, required 6th grade reading, changes the collective consciousness.
I love that. What's the third one?
The third one's a little ditty that I put out last year. It's called Finding Harmony in the Fucks You Give. And so it's kind of a grouping of all the different knowledge bases that I've taken in from Stoic philosophy, from metaphysics, from the books I just mentioned, from communication skills, from psychology. And it's really a book about mindset matters. And it's got a bunch of activities in it. And the idea is for you to figure out what matters most to you. We get so bent out of shape about stuff that happened or stuff that may happen. And it's because we never really took into account, what do I really care about? What's really dang important to me? What are the priorities? Because just that don't take things personally, there's a whole bunch of baggage we carry around that we could just set down if we knew what baggage wasn't ours.
That's so true. Some people need 2 or 3 valets to help them get their baggage, right? From the car to the door.
That's it.
That's a Mark Twain line, not mine. I'm not taking credit for that.
Well, it's a damn good one. So, and that doesn't surprise me. He's one of the 2 guys, and I'm going to ask you this. He's one of the 2 guys that if they say, if you could bring anybody back to sit on a park bench or go have a dinner with, who would it be? Mark Twain's on my list. Who's on yours?
He's on my list. I think one, he's a cigar guy. He would smoke 10 to 12 cigars a day. And wildly entertaining, funny. I love to laugh. And the other person, is it dead or it doesn't matter, right? Dead or alive. I would like to get in the head of, and this is going to be weird, Genghis Khan, right? He did some amazing things around strategy, and he was a little jacked up when it come to, people didn't agree with him. They didn't live very long. But he was really big into loyalty. And I'd really like to unpack some of the things that got disconnected and connected in his brain. I know that's a way outside one, but I think we could learn from other people's mistakes. And he was rather successful at what he did, and he brought people together. Some of it was through intimidation and fear, but Genghis Khan and Mark Twain. What about you? Who's the other one?
The second one's Ben Franklin for me, right? Because that dude had a fascinating life, and the amount of things that we still have today as a result of his efforts really impressed me. And from what little I've read, evidently he had quite the appetite in many different areas. And
for women.
Yeah.
He worked his way through the French court a couple of times over.
Right.
And he wasn't exactly Brad Pitt.
No, he didn't look like it, man. None of the pictures I saw made him look like the handsome devil that could be pulling that off. But
a hell of a lot of personality. Charming.
Yeah. Charming is all get out, right? And so it goes a long way, and it gives people that look like me hope, man. It really does.
Well, that's a really good choice. That I just the his inventor side of him, his curiosity, right? There's a certain amount of skepticism. He was a hell of a sales guy in terms of brokering deals with all of those, you know, in the room when the founding fathers were working out details of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. You know, they looked at Jefferson to go do the smart stuff and do the writing, but he was able to get people to sit down and actually have a conversation and talk to each other just because he was Ben Franklin.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting because Mark Twain once famously quipped about Ben Franklin. He said, "It was said that Ben Franklin walked into Philadelphia with nothing but the shirt on his back and 2 loaves of bread under his arms." Hell, anybody could have done that. I just think that's so. Those two, I think, would be just so fun to sit and have like way too much sherry or port with or bourbon or whatever they were drinking back in the day, man.
Yeah, I think they were wine drinkers, and I don't know what the hell Mark drank, but that's interesting. So let's talk about mindset, because I think before I hit the record button, we were talking about various things around culture and the society today, and mindset. We could go down, you know, what we're doing as individuals, how we behave, what we bring to the party with, you know, the baggage and the things we should let go of. I've been studying Stoicism for a while. Studying is a loose term, but the book behind me there, Meditations, I think is
Classic.
it's one that I read a couple times a year. And what's interesting about it is that he didn't intend. It wasn't a book.
It wasn't a book, it was a journal. Yeah.
It was just his thoughts, and somehow that survived to as a real, probably the first journaler type guy, if that's a word. And I mean, there's a lot of great things that came out of it. So
pretty wild to think that a Roman emperor would have the time and the energy and just the mindset to jot some of that stuff down. Right? Because, I mean, he was kind of busy running the largest empire that, you know, arguably the world's ever known. So it's pretty cool that he was still making time to do things that mattered to him. And I think from a mindset perspective, one of the things that I've really appreciated over the past couple of years is this notion of self-care has finally come into vogue a little bit. And I do a lot of speaking. And I talk to men's groups and I talk to women's groups, and obviously I talk to mixed groups a lot too. But the women in particular need to be booking time for self-care. I'm pretty good about it, right? We've got buddies we go hang out with, screw around with, whether we're at the gym or on the golf course or at the cigar bar or whatever. But women need to be making sure that they're putting themselves on the list. I don't think they're ever going to get to a point where they put themselves first, right? I don't think that works, especially if you are a wife and have kids at home and a job and all the things.
Yeah, to be a mom, it's hard to put yourself first when you're, you know.
That's it. I was watching a Chelsea Handler, the comedian, bit the other day. She's like, people are asking me, when are you going to be a mother? I'm like, I don't want to be a mother. I want to be a divorced dad. I would be fantastic in that role. That would be great. I could be a stepfather. Nobody expects shit from a stepfather. I could do that. It was cracking me up. But you're right. So it's hard for women in particular to prioritize that self-care. And if you're a lady in sales, you absolutely need to, because you got to show up with your best in every single interaction, just like men do. Men aren't excused from showing up with their best, but it's easier to attain that when you're taking some care of yourself.
Well, they have an advantage and a disadvantage, right? Everybody does, but if they're not doing their best, they quickly get discounted in the sales role. they don't have, and some of the best salespeople that I work with are women, and it's they have that nurturing quality that guys like you and I remember when I was doing sales training, I worked with Jerry Weinberg, and Jerry would tell us, like, you can say whatever you want to anybody at any time, you just have to say it nurturingly. And he would say nurturingly 3 times, right? So we would do role plays and things, and I would say something. He's like, Walter, we said nurturingly, right? You gotta do it nurturing. I'm like, I'm not a mom, right? I don't have any of those qualities about me. But this is all about acting, right? You got to try to tamp that asshole part of you down so that you can be more nurturing. And I think in sales, if you have that natural ability and you throw a little curiosity on top of that and maybe a little skepticism from time to time, right? They also have the empathy that's needed. It's a natural thing. And they just have to be comfortable, going out, talking to people. But at the same time, there's still a lot of guys that don't think of them as an equal. And so from a self-care point of view, you're going beyond you're talking about psychological self-care, about taking time for yourself, to be able, even in a marriage. My wife has things that she enjoys doing that I want no part of.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And there's things that, like, I do that she wants no part of. And we're perfectly cool with doing those things separately, because we have enough other things that we can do together. And
you might be saving this, but by the way, on the off chance she listens, tell her to fast forward to right about now.
Yeah, well, we got 1546. I'll remember that.
You better time it. Hey, honey, I was talking about you.
But pretty much what I say in general, I we're not hiding the weenie after 25 years. She pretty much knows what she's got. I've always said that she's super smart, really, top shelf in her profession, but we got to question her judgment because she married. Which That's I've said to her in public. I've said to her at parties. I've said it to her old boss, and it always gets a chuckle. But she kind of still not comfortable with it. Like, she still thinks it's a shot, and it's not. It's a compliment.
It's right. It's a shot, but it's a shot at me, not at you.
Exactly. So, for guys, for the self-care. I mean, I've always had people in my life that I could call up and say, I got a thing I need to talk to you about. And that meant we needed to go either have a drink or go have lunch. And it didn't wait, right? It was dealt with in, 48 hours. And to me, that's part of what you're talking about. Hey, thanks for being part of Sales and Cigars. I wanted to share a new project that we just launched. I wrote a new book called Scale Your Sales. It's written for the CEO. It's a short, powerful book that explains the 7 critical mistakes that CEOs make with their sales organization. It provides actionable steps that you can take to fix those problems in your business today. And it might even help you get out of the sales seat yourself. So, appreciate you listening to Sales and Cigars. You can find this book on Amazon or wherever you buy books. Thanks.
But women are actually good at that, right? Women know how to communicate their feelings, their ideas, their challenges. And most of them, albeit small, they have a tight group of people. And it could be sisters or it could be, girlfriends from 30 years ago. Guys have a harder time doing the let's talk about my feelings or what's going on, right? Especially guys of a certain age or of a certain hair color, mostly, white. And so it's an interesting piece that we've got to get better at as males and having those communications, and women, just like I said, making time for themselves. It's important and it's relevant, and it's a good place to be able to grow. And, I don't want to make fun of safe spaces again, but it is, you got to have that open area of trust where you can communicate, because that's how you drop the baggage, man. if you're not going to sit with it and face it, right? There's that old fake it till you make it, which is bullshit advice. But the new spin on that is face it till you make it, whether you're sitting with the pain or the anguish or the trauma or the BS, whatever, you got to deal with it and process it. And one way to deal with it is to talk it out with somebody who cares about you, who is willing to take that garbage from you so you're not carrying it anymore. And hopefully that person's smart enough or strong enough to take that garbage from you and then set it down. Too often those people that take it from us internalize it. It's like, whoa, dude, that's not your job. That's not even your trash. You don't need to take that anywhere. You kick that right to the curb.
I think that's a really good way to describe it. I've never had 20 guys that I could call up and do that with. There's always been one or two at any given point. And I've lost some of those guys over the years. I'm not comfortable just sharing weirdness or a big problem with a general group of friends. It's usually that one person that there's a language that you don't have to explain all of the other things. Like
right.
The backstory is known. The
shorthand's already done. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Shorthand. And I'm thinking of when I was younger, there was a guy that I could call up, and he would do the same to me. He would call me up and say, hey, we need to go have a pitcher of margaritas. And that was code for like, I need to talk to you about something. And it was we did it around alcohol, but nobody got lit up. It was like deal with the problem. And to me, it was a lot like sales, where you would listen to the individual who had the issue. So Jimmy would listen to me, and I would listen to him when it was his thing. And you would really just like let him talk, get it all out, as you said, take that trash, and then like, this is your problem. Yeah, that's the problem. Well, it's bullshit, right? And you go set it over here, and then you help them see why that was bullshit. All right. And we didn't have all of the skills that we have as we got older, but you cared. If the person didn't care, they weren't going to be able to do that.
Right.
And they had to give you the space to be vulnerable. And you had to trust them to do that. I don't know how you get through life without having somebody to offload some of that baggage. But there are people, and we both kind of think of the safe place as the way society refers to it now. But that safe place to me was like, I could talk to my parents when I was a kid. I could talk to my buddies, right? It just what I can talk to my wife about things, but it's not. It's not being driven from some like you hurt my feelings. It's more of I have this thing that I need to deal with, and I should deal with it. And I know I need to deal with it, but you're dealing with it. You're not just hiding from it.
And that's the face it part. Right. And that's the piece that's so important. And sometimes it takes that sounding board. Right. I tell people I'll be the mirror for you. Right. I'll sit here and hold up the mirror and show you exactly what you're not seeing, and it's an important lesson because we miss out on that stuff. Right. Because sometimes we're just too close to it. Right. And you don't have, you can't see the forest through the trees, so to speak. So it's one of those things where, if you don't have a person or a couple of people like that in your corner, it's a lot harder to deal with that stuff, because then you got to go grab that mental scalpel. Right. And you got to cut that BS out of your head. And any good surgeon will tell you it's really hard to operate on yourself.
Yeah. I would think the whole anesthesia thing would be problematic.
It would be.
But you can pay a professional to get you there, which is maybe an alternative. But I don't even think you can go have that conversation with the friend if you haven't sat with it, tried to figure it out, come to some sort of conclusion, even if it's wildly wrong, right? You go look, help that person holds up the mirror for you, and you can actually see it. But if you got to go do that work first, I think. Is
It's
that
the
fair?
hardest part. Yeah. And in an ideal world, you're bringing to your friend the three conclusions that you came up with and said, which one's the best, as opposed to let me just vomit all over you so I can unpack all this mess right here. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree that in either scenario, you facing it becomes the key element. And this is, this is applicable. How many times do we have upset clients and we're not even sure what they did, or excuse me, what we did to have that issue, right? Because, we have a tendency, not everybody, and certainly not high performing sales professionals, but a lot of folks avoid difficult discussions.
Mm.
And the reality is, difficult discussions become a lot easier when you focus on what you can control in that conversation, as opposed to spinning 74 things up that might have gone wrong. You could just go and talk about it, right? And if you're curious and a good listener and asking the right questions and actually concerned about creating a positive outcome, your clients are going to want to engage in that discussion too. Most of the people that have invested in you in any way, shape, or form throughout your career, those people want to see you win, right? And we need to keep that in mind.
Well, I think that's there's a couple of things there that I think are critical. The having the uncomfortable conversation, as a salesperson with a client, like they're unhappy. Okay, talk to me about it. Well, I didn't like what this and I didn't like that outcome. All right, well, I understand that. That makes sense. So let's talk about how we got there. Like I believe in like lowering the resistance, right? Like I heard you,
100%.
and I would agree. I see why you're upset. So let's figure out a way to solve it. And if we can't, then we'll deal with that. And that can be done professionally, personally. It doesn't matter. I think you gotta be willing to have that. Otherwise, it's not worth it, and then you just walk away. But most of those problems can be solved through communication if folks are willing to have the right conversation and be present for them and accept some responsibility.
That's right.
There's a line that I was taught: "Don't judge me on the fact I made a mistake. Judge me on how I handle it." And some of that is responsibility, and some of it is acknowledging what you could do different the next time, or learning from it, or just listening to it. I think that's a human nature. People just want to avoid those things. Some of us like confrontation, but
Right. Yeah. Well, and the accountability thing's hard, right? We got really used to just blaming other people for the things that went wrong. And now there's an interesting movement about radical accountability. And I love that, man. Every single thing that's gone wrong in my life is on me, period. All of it. Doesn't matter. If someone crashed into my car, right, it's still my fault for having my car there. Right? It's not 100% on me, but I still have some responsibility for what happened.
I don't know that it's radical in that we need to get people to be thinking about it differently. But you control. It's a part of stoicism. You have to own it. You got to realize that this is something I can control, and this is what I focus on. But just because it's a conversation I have with people all the time. I can't make you feel something, right? I can cause you to have a reaction, but if you accept that and internalize it and start to think it's real, that's really on the individual who's decided to like, maybe that person's right. And I mean, we all have that. Maybe they're right? Maybe we kind of have that inclination, but I'm not taking your trash if I don't agree that it's my trash. If I did something wrong, I said something stupid, and I did it last night, right? I made a comment that I probably shouldn't have made, and got my wife upset, and I'm like, I shouldn't have said that. Well, you meant it. Like, yeah, but it's different. I shouldn't have said it.
But that doesn't mean you needed to hear it.
I mean, there are times when people need to hear things, and then there's times you just have the thought, and it doesn't need to exit your mouth. You can just hold on to it because it's not going to be helpful.
That's true.
Being able to look yourself in the mirror and like, yeah, I fucked that up. I shouldn't have done that, and it's my fault. Is hard for everybody. But if you're a narcissist, you're never gonna accept that responsibility. And there's a lot of that going on right now.
There really is, and there doesn't need to be, but that doesn't change the fact that's where we are, right? It's wild to me, man. I just, my entire world revolves around trying to help people be better people, and I don't know why I think that's like my cross to my burden to cross. How's that saying go? My cross to bear.
Cross to bear.
My cross to bear. But man, I just want us to be better as human beings, right? It's, I wrote that first book on networking because I wanted people to be better at networking, because I realized that if you're better at networking, it instantly makes my networking better too, right? I want us all to win, man. I just do.
It's all Park Avenue. It's a two-way street, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
I think it's wanting to do that and having the time to do it. I mean, you mentioned Marcus Aurelius being an emperor, had some stuff on his plate to handle running an empire. But he had one advantage. I mean, there was a lot of tragedy in his life. There were plagues. There was food shortages. There was always somebody trying to kill him. But he didn't have the internet. He didn't have television. He didn't have movies. They had books and plays as distractions. So he could find 45 minutes here and there to go grab his quill or whatever they used to write with back then. What did they use to write with back that far back?
You know what? I don't know, man. That's an interesting question. It's not like they were grinding down graphite and turning it into pencils. And yeah, it must have been a quill, right? Well, how do you come up with ink? They're stabbing octopuses. What do they got going on down there?
Well, the Egyptians had ink. They were using, some water, some other vehicles, some oils and pigments that they found to change things. That's how they made, dyed clothes and stuff like that. But
that was thousands of years before Aurelius, so that explains that.
Yeah, but we're getting deep into technology that I don't get.
Yeah, that's it.
But he had extra time that we don't have, right? He wasn't doing podcasts. He wasn't talking on the telephone.
He never watched The Simpsons. I'm starting to feel bad for the guy.
Or Seinfeld. He didn't have any Seinfeld in his life.
Zero. You miss out on Kramer? Come on.
Or Chelsea Handler, as you said before. Like, he didn't have to experience that.
That's right. But he did kind of live through Game of Thrones, but I don't know if it was, adapted for TV.
It was on a daily basis. He was handpicked to become emperor. And that pissed off a lot of people that were passed over. And it was all about power back then. So, yeah, but I think taking the time, going back to what you were talking about, is to take the time to pause for a minute and just, think about where you are and think about what you can do better, what you need to do, what tools you need that you don't have, where are you stuck, and surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded and are going to help you along that journey. Sometimes that means you have to exit certain relationships that don't support that journey, and that's hard, but sometimes it's the right thing to do.
It's oftentimes what needs to happen, right? They've said for years you can figure out your wealth by the sum of your five closest friends most times, right? So, there's this, it's a great way to look at it. If your people are sitting around talking about people, you're doing it wrong. If your people are sitting around talking about growth and ideas, those are the people you want to be hanging out with.
Yeah, I lost a friend last year, and he would be like, his idea of getting together was, let's go grab a cocktail, a cigar, and talk smart, solving the world's problems. And we never solved any real problems for the world, but we solved problems in our little world. And we got to places where we could literally smack each other in the back of the head. Like, what are you doing? Like, that's not helpful, right? To you or to your spouse and family and such. So, yeah,
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, there was 3 of those last year. So I think I think that's one of the messages that people can take away from this, is that you gotta spend that time facing it, as you said, and then try to analyze it and come up with a plan, and then go check in with somebody you trust. So I mean, that's the safe place.
One of my favorite little beanisms is the best inspection is introspection, right? So you got to spend the time to check in with you. And that's why I ended up writing the book, to help my daughter get through some crap that she went through. And when I was writing it, I was like, I wasn't trying to write a book. I was just writing her essays to help her go through some trauma. And I got halfway through the essays. I was like, this might make a good book. She's like, yeah, I'm learning a lot. And I was like, all right. So I found a friend of mine that's a good graphic artist, designer type, and said, let's brainstorm some activities that we can put into this and create like a workbook, so people can actually not just read the words, but have tactical actions to take. Do you mind if I share the link, because it's free and it's downloadable for folks?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, where do they get it? And then I'll have it in the show notes. But like, let's talk about it now, where they can do the download, because a book that talks about something that the concept, but then you take it to the level of, here's an exercise, here's something you can take some action on. Those are the ones that move the needle.
That's right. Yeah, because if you're just going to read it, you're probably not going to do anything with it.
So most people don't even finish the book. So
exactly.
Go ahead with the link.
So the workbook, the downloadable, it's a PDF. You can fill it in right online. The downloadable workbook is at trybean.com/finding harmony workbook. Very clever, right? I didn't swear in the URL or anything. So trybean.com, oddly enough, my website, /finding harmony workbook.
All right. Well, we'll have that in the, for the people that are on the treadmill or driving in their car, we'll have that in the show notes. You can go back and click on that and download it, because it does what you're talking about. It's helpful.
It's helpful.
And you're gonna engage with somebody, and you're gonna help them. And if they've got questions, what's the best way to reach Terry?
I'm super accessible through that same website, trybean.com, and my email address is cleverly hidden as bean@trybean.com. So I try and be super sneaky, man.
We'll have all that in the notes for people to go grab. So The last questions I always ask a guest, it's for my own edification. Past or present, any relationship with cigars?
Yeah, I will smoke a couple a year, whether I want to or not. It normally involves those buddies that I'd go have those deep, I need help conversations with. One of them's out in Brighton, one of them's down in Allentown. And so we meet at Northville, and there's a little joint called the Novi Cigar Bar. It's kind of centrally located for the 3 of us.
Northville Cigar Bar.
No, I think it's the Novi Cigar Bar. Northville Cigar Bar is like downtown Northville.
Yeah, it's on Center Street. There's a Novi one too. Holy shit! I
Yeah.
learned something.
This one's on 8 Mile. Excuse me. It's just south. Shit, is it just south of 7 or just south of 8? Right on Haggerty. So it's right off the freeway. It's crazy because we all will text when we get home, and we'll all get home within like 2 minutes of each other. It takes all of us like an hour and 40 minutes to get there because it's always like 5 or 5:30, 6 o'clock when we're meeting. But the ride home is like a half hour. It's really nice. So it's a cool little joint, man, and it's got the proper cigar store Indian. I still miss Lars Teton cigars from way back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I'll try some new stuff. I've liked a couple of Davidoffs, but mostly I'm an Acid, Cuba or a 1400 guy.
Okay. Yeah, I love just trying new things, but there's a few standards that I hang with. But it's funny that there's a lot of guys that will have 2, 3, 4 a year. Sometimes it's around the situations you're talking about. Sometimes it's on a golf course. I haven't played golf in a while, but when I did, it was like you're outside. It's usually decent weather. You're with friends.
Yep.
There's alcohol and a cigar around, and you're chasing a white ball around. As Mark Twain would say, it was a good walk spoiled. But I mean, it was cigars were always part of that. And years ago, my wife made the comment, "You developed 2 bad habits this summer: golf and cigars, because they go hand in hand for me."
Yeah.
So Terry, I really appreciate you taking the time to jump on this. We can probably have other conversations down the road.
Let's do that.
And we'll have the books are all available on the website or at Amazon?
Yeah, they're right there on the website.
Okay.
I'll even sign them and send them.
Cool. Thank you. And we'll be talking again soon here. I think in the next few months, we'll do this again. Appreciate it.
I'll look forward to it, man. Thank you for the time, Walter. Good talk.
Thanks for being part of another fun episode of Sales and Cigars. Let me ask you a question. Are you tired of struggling to hire sales talent that's going to move the needle for your company? Well, maybe you should attend my Sales Hiring Secrets program and discover the number one mistake that business owners are making with hiring sales talent in their organization. The details are in the show notes. Click on the page. It gives you all the details. It gives you everything you need to know to solve the problem of sales talent on your team. Thanks.